Hi everyone, today I have another painting tutorial for you. We are going to urban sketch this winter scene together in under 30 minutes. So let's go. Okay, so first let's begin with our pencil outline. So let's block in the 2-point perspective of the building. So it's starting about the middle of the frame. The 2-point perspective means that the building is going to be going this way and then this way, away from our point of vision. And we're gonna have a little sidewalk here. We're gonna have crosswalks. So let's block those in. Next, we're gonna have a car driving through the scene right about here. So let's put in a general block for where that car is gonna go to make sure that we leave room for it. There's another car back here. We have a line of cars just after the sidewalk. Let's block in the shape of a tree here. Now let's block in how many buildings we have. So we have 3 main buildings as a subject. So 1, 2, 3. And this one's gonna end somewhere right behind the tree. And then finally we're gonna have the church. So let's draw the shape of the church back here where it's gonna be poking out. Finally, I'm gonna add just the general line of the porch roof line. That's gonna give us a shape to work with. And then a general shape of where the windows are gonna go on the buildings. Now we're gonna start with pen, and the things that we're gonna do first are all of the items in the foreground. So let's start with the car. So first, just outlining the general shape of the windshield, mirror. Let's do the front hood and the lights. We have this kind of curved front of the car. Now let's add the shape of where the wheels go. Let's add the shape of the windows. And finally, the back of the car. Cars look actually a lot more complicated than they are to draw. I'm just following the major shapes that I see with my eye, and it really does not have to be super detailed for your brain to register that it's a car. This one's quite a bit smaller because it's much further back away from the viewer in the scene. So just a super fast, loose interpretation of a car. Same thing on the other side. Super fast. You can keep your pen on the paper a lot to kind of create that really sketchy, loose, illustrative look. Add some little windshields. There we are. So let's start with the stoplight. Got 3 circles. The square shape of the stoplight. There's 2 signs directly underneath the light, and then the post goes down to the street. And that's it, super simple. Let's do the street sign. As you can see, I'm leaving my pen on paper a lot as I draw. And the general shape of this gray box. Keeping my pen to paper as I just add some little squiggle details to make this look and feel kind of old and grungy. Okay, now let's outline the sidewalk. Sidewalk's going tucked behind the cars. And let's add in our crosswalk. Same thing for the other side. When I'm drawing the border, I'm intentionally trying to make it look loose and scratchy and wiggly, even leaving some little spaces as you see. adding in scratches and wiggles. Again, makes it feel super hand-drawn and not too stuffy or precise. Now let's move on to the left side of the buildings. So let's start with the one closest to us. I'm going to start with the roof line because that is a pretty interesting shape. It's a nice curved shape, and it even has a cute little roof behind it. Adding in some squiggles. Let's go down to create the awning over the porch. There's a few columns. It looks like there's 4 in real life, but I'm just going to draw 3 to simplify the scene. And then we have a little fence here above the ground. Same on the other side. Let's draw the windows. For the windows, see how I'm not lifting my pen off the paper very much? Giving it that hand-drawn feel. Okay, the building next to it also has a fun little roof and a little porch awning. So we're kind of going with the same shapes as the first building. Again, don't worry about it looking too perfect. And let's draw the general shape of the final building. It looks like it has this fun little roof cutout, adding in rectangular shingles to the roof. And same method for these windows. Just follow the contours of what you see without lifting your pen too much to create that super scratchy, loose feel. And you can kind of give the impression that there's some windows and stuff going on here in the porches, just with some loose rectangles. And that's it for the left side of the scene. Let's start with the tree in the foreground. So we have this gorgeous winter tree, and it has 3 main branches coming up. So I'm just going to contour line draw that. And contour line drawing is the technique of keeping your pen to paper for as long as possible and just drawing the general shapes that you see. Here I'm kind of trying to get the impression that the tree is more bulbous at the top and tapers down towards the ground. Now just add in some little wiggly branches. Drawing trees can be really intimidating because they're extremely detailed. I myself get kind of impatient sometimes drawing plants, but what really helps me is to just remember that the details of the tree that matter are really just the fact that you're kind of getting some lines in there that look organically shaped. Nobody that's looking at your painting is going to look at the tree and count the number of twigs on it. So just kind of take your pen to paper, go quickly, add a bunch of little squiggles, and don't worry too much about it looking extremely accurate to the real life tree. Okay, so now that we've got that in, we're going to draw the buildings. But as we do, let's leave a little bit of white space around the tree so that the drawing doesn't become too muddled. So I'm going to draw the roof line continuing here, and a little chimney that I see up at the top, and then leaving a little bit of white space. And then the building ends here, again leaving white space. Let's come down here. We just have a few like small background details of these extra buildings, so I'm just adding some really loose rectangles here and kind of squiggles to give you the idea that there's more city buildings back here. Let's start with the major shapes of the church first. Okay, so we have this first curved shape, another smaller curved shape on top of it. Then we have some little curved windows. and then a dome at the top with a cross. Now let's go in and fill in some details. See how I'm moving super quickly with this? It really does not have to be super detailed and accurate, especially since this is far away in the drawing. It's not close enough to the eye that we like have to get every single detail in there. Okay, and that's it. So we don't want to overwork the drawing, so let's leave it there and then we'll come back and we'll add watercolor. Okay, so for my watercolor palette, I'm just using my $2 plastic watercolor palette that I fill with reusable Cotman watercolors. So this is what the palette looks like. I have some warmer colors on this side and some cooler colors on this side, and I'm going to be telling you which colors I'm using and pulling from this palette as I paint. And then for my paint brushes, I'm just only using two. They're both traditional watercolor brushes, and they are squirrel hair brushes. So I have one in a large size, and then I have one in a smaller fine liner size, and I'm going to go back in at the end with some details with this one. And then finally, just a cup of water. Erase your pencil. So before we add the paint, we first have to think about where the sun's coming from in this image. The sun's coming from the left side, and it's hitting all of the buildings here and the cars on the left side, and then this side of the painting is going to be warmer, and that means this side of the painting is going to be cooler. So we're going to reflect that in our watercolor paint choices. So first, let's start with Payne's Gray. It's a beautiful soft gray. I'm using my large brush, going to put it onto the car, and as I go, mix the front of the car, which is a bit cooler in shadow, with ultramarine blue. And I'm going to take that same gray ultramarine blue and pop it on a couple of the additional cars in the background. Next, taking Payne's Gray, adding to the light post in this gray box. And let's do the street too while we're at it. So we're going to add Payne's Gray down here to the street. Doesn't have to be a ton. Just kind of put in some streaks to give you the idea of asphalt. And do yellow, warmer burnt sienna on the sunny side of the street, mix with Payne's Gray onto the left side of the street. Super, super light. So I am going to bump up the colors that we see in real life on this reference photo. I'm going to start with this delightful, warm burnt sienna here on this building. And I'm painting from left to right. As I go, I'm mixing it with orange. So the colors kind of flow together, as you can see. I'm seeing more brown in this image, so I'm mixing brown in. Okay. And then for the shadow, let's mix the combination of burnt sienna and brown with a little bit of Payne's Gray. That's going to create our shadow color for the right side of the image. And then we'll just drag that along. Do super loose, large strokes. Don't worry about filling in every single shape. For the roof line, let's do a combination of Payne's Gray and ultramarine blue. I'm just going to kind of alternate these as I decide as I go to add variation in color to the roof line. That's the fun part about watercolor, is creating these really nice ombre effects with it. Not everything needs to be colored in exactly one color. Then I'm going to pull Payne's Gray down underneath the awnings of the porches because there's going to be some shadow under there. So just pulling the roof paint down a little. There we go. I'm going to add some warmth to the buildings over here just to break them up a bit in the scene. And then finally, the church is this really nice, warm, burnt sienna color. So I'm doing that at the top, mixed with a tad of Payne's Gray on the right to see that we have shadow. Let's add sky. So I'm grabbing a heaping dose of aquamarine blue, and I'm just gonna smudge it on the paper like this. Just a little smudge up there. I also grabbed a little bit of purple with it. Now I'm grabbing some water with a clean brush, and I'm just gonna pull this down a little to kind of feather out the paint. Okay, now we're gonna leave it at that. We're gonna let this layer dry, and then we're gonna come back and do one final layer of watercolor. Okay, now for the final layer, I'm gonna be using my fine liner brush, and we're gonna be going in with some more dark colors to add contrast to the scene and then pull back out some of the details from the first layer. So first I've mixed brown and Payne's gray. And as I go, I'm varying between more of the brown mixture and then more of the Payne's gray color to kind of create some color variation in the tree. Aquamarine blue for the roof line mixed with Payne's gray. Creating a bit more of that contrast under the roof line where there's shadow. Do the same thing for the balcony. See how this is helping pull back out some of the details? Let's grab aquamarine blue for the windows. Just do some loose smudges on the window panes. Same thing with the cars. Let's add a little bit of blue to the window shields. Let's add more contrast to this first car. Just kind of following some of those lines. A little bit more shadows on the backs of the church, the right side of the church. Let's grab purple and mix with aquamarine blue, and then create a nice shadow color that I'm just gonna pull along the bottom of some of the items in the painting, remembering that the sun's coming this way. So the sun's coming this way, so the sign shadow is gonna look like this on the street. We have shadows under the cars, under the tree. See, we'll have another shadow coming from this lamp right here, this light post. We're kind of just mimicking the shapes that we see here already on the drawing. So that's the tutorial complete. I hope you had as much fun as I did working on this winter urban sketch scene. And if you have any questions about any part of my process that you didn't understand, please leave me a comment so that I can address it and improve next time. Thank you for watching.